Donald Trump just got hit with a massive legal defeat. A U.S. federal appeals court has ruled that many of Trump's sweeping tariffs, the very foundation of his so-called economic strategy, are illegal. And while Trump rages and cries foul, leaders like California Governor Gavin Newsom are celebrating, saying this proves what they've been arguing all along. Trump's reckless, unlawful trade policies hurt American families, break the law, and go far beyond presidential power.
A federal appeals court has just ruled that Trump's sprawling tariffs are unlawful and invalid. Of course, the president has been obsessed with imposing his willy-nilly tariffs on Americans. In fact, it has been the central plank of his entire economic agenda. Now, it has been wildly unpopular. It's polling underwater. It is costing consumers and corporations billions and billions of dollars by the day. It's stopping the Fed from cutting interest rates by driving inflation. It has, on the whole, been really bad economic policy. And most of the discussion of these tariffs have been focused on that. But there's also something about these tariffs, which is that from the jump, they've been pretty clearly illegal. I mean, think about it for a second. Can the president just by himself create tariffs that raise hundreds of billions of dollars with zero congressional input? These tariffs are a violation of the law that they purport to use as the justification, and a violation of the spirit of the Constitution of a country which was quite literally founded on the belief the executive cannot unilaterally just impose a tax without representation, specifically tariffs. Now, the Trump administration has claimed that its tariff regime and the reciprocal tariffs that it has, and those on China and Mexico and Canada, that those are an emergency measure under a 1974 law, and that made it illegal. Well, when this was challenged in a district court, the district court judge said, no way, this does not comport with the law. So the Department of Justice, acting as Trump's lawyers, appealed. And now, just 20 minutes ago, in a huge development, an appellate court has just upheld that ruling 7-4, the federal appellate circuit, saying it is illegal.
In a 7-4 ruling, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit found that Trump abused the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. Why? Because the law doesn't give the president the right to unilaterally impose tariffs. That's Congress's job. The court zeroed in on Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs, a 10% baseline slapped on nearly every country, plus extra reciprocal duties that punish trade partners depending on U.S. deficits. This ruling doesn't take the tariffs off immediately. The court gave the Trump administration until October 14, 2025 to appeal. That's when this fight could move to the Supreme Court. Tariffs are taxes. They drive up costs for American consumers and small businesses. Families already stretched thin end up paying hundreds more each year because of them. Trump tried to frame tariffs as tough on China or protecting American workers. But the reality? It was a hidden tax hike on the middle class. And this court ruling isn't just about economics. It's about checks and balances.
You'll frame the argument that you made and what the court said about those arguments.
Yeah, so I want to begin, Chris, by saying, like you started by saying it's a blow to the President Trump. The way I really think of it is it's a win for the Constitution. And it's always, a very serious, sober thing when you challenge presidential action, and something you have to do really carefully. But when we looked at this, and I'm privileged to represent a number of small businesses, we looked at it and said, look, this just is way beyond the constitutional pale. And that's what the 7 judges today said on our nation's second highest court. They looked at it and said, the president under our Constitution is given no power to impose tariffs. Our founders expressly gave that to the Congress in Article 1, Section 8. And President Trump himself recognized that last time when he was president. He went and asked Congress for the authority to tariff, and they said no. So President Trump this time around just did it on his own. And what we said is you can't do that under the laws and Constitution of the United States. And that's what I'm glad to see the court reaffirm today.
Trump wanted to grab power Congress never gave him. If the court had let him get away with it, presidents in the future could bypass Congress and impose sweeping taxes whenever they felt like it. That's not democracy. That's authoritarianism wrapped in bad economics. California Governor Gavin Newsom has been on this case from the start. Back in April, Newsom and Attorney General Rob Bonta filed a lawsuit against Trump's tariffs, calling them illegal and unconstitutional.
Is poised to lose more than the state of California. So that's our state of mind. And that's why we're asserting ourselves on behalf of 40 million Americans. And I imagine if you caucus those 40 million Americans, you'd find few, I don't care where they were in the last election, that are celebrating this uncertainty, that are celebrating the largest tax increase in modern U.S. history.
When lower courts first sided against Trump earlier this year, Newsom said it bluntly, "These tariffs are illegal, full stop." And after this new appeals court decision, he doubled down. Newsom blasted Trump as, quote, "America's biggest loser." Yes, those were his exact words, and said the tariffs were nothing but a reckless assault on working families and small businesses. Newsom's also pointed to the data. California alone was projected to lose 64,000 jobs and $25 billion in wages because of Trump's trade war. Families would see their costs rise by more than $2,400 a year. That's not winning. That's economic sabotage. And what's Trump doing? Exactly what you'd expect. He's calling the ruling partisan, whining that it's unfair, and promising to take it to the Supreme Court. But here's the problem for Trump. Even a conservative-leaning Supreme Court may not want to hand him this blank check on presidential power, because if they did, it wouldn't just be Trump, it would be Biden, or any president down the line, suddenly able to slap tariffs or taxes without Congress. That's a precedent even right-wing justices might not want to set.
Yeah, I thought this is an interesting phrasing. This is the federal circuit, which is an interesting and unique appellate circuit that deals with certain jurisdictions, including international trade. They talk about the 5 executive orders that impose tariffs of, and they say, unlimited duration on nearly all goods from nearly every country in the world. Which I thought was, when you put it like that, you think to yourself, yeah, that does seem like a pretty broad claim of executive authority.
Yeah, as broad as it could get. And I think this is one thing that the judges were concerned about, and certainly we've been thinking about, which is the Trump administration is saying they want to bring this case to the Supreme Court. And this U.S. Supreme Court for many years has been saying, in particular with respect to a lot of different President Biden's initiatives, these questions are too major for the president alone to decide. They have to be done by the Congress. And here you got something as major as it gets. The Nonpartisan Tax Foundation says that these tariffs are the largest tax increase on Americans since Bill Clinton in 1993. And yet Congress had nothing to do with them. It's just President Trump and the stroke of his pen. And that just can't be the right way to run a constitutional system.
This ruling is a reminder of something fundamental. Donald Trump governs by chaos and power grabs, not by law. Whether it's tariffs, immigration, or executive orders, he tries to bulldoze past the Constitution and dare the courts to stop him. This time, the courts did. And let's not ignore the politics. Trump's entire re-election pitch is built on being the economic strongman. But when the courts are literally calling his trade policies illegal, when families are paying thousands more at the grocery store and small businesses are drowning in higher costs, the myth of Trump the businessman falls apart. Trump's tariffs have been ruled illegal, and the fight now heads to the Supreme Court, where the stakes could not be higher.